Officer Daniels had done this 100 times before. A lone black woman on a desolate stretch of highway. No witnesses, no backup for her. Just him, his badge, and the authority he wielded. He knew exactly how this would unfold, how it always did. She would argue, insist she knew her rights, maybe even resist for a moment. But in the end, they always complied. They always did. But Angela Carter wasn't like the others. He saw a civilian. What he didn't see was a U.S. Army colonel, trained to lead, to fight, to win. He had no idea of the discipline, the strength, the unshakable resolve forged through war zones and high-stakes operations. He didn't realize that every command he barked, every attempt to impose control, was pulling him deeper into his own undoing. And when he pushed too far, when he reached for power that was never truly his, he didn't just pick the wrong target. He ignited a fight that would destroy everything he thought he controlled. And before we go any further, comment where in the world you are watching from, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories like this. The afternoon sun bathed the deserted highway in a golden glow as Colonel Angela Carter drove home, her SUV gliding over the pavement in a steady rhythm. The day had been long, ceremonies, speeches, the weight of duty honoring veterans, but now, in civilian clothes, she felt a semblance of distance from it all. A navy blazer over a crisp white blouse, slacks neatly pressed. Her military uniform, folded in a garment bag, rested on the passenger seat, ribbons and rank insignia tucked safely away. Then she saw them, flashing red and blue lights in the rearview mirror, her brow furrowed. She hadn't been speeding, hadn't swerved, hadn't broken a single law. Yet, the patrol car stayed on her tail, signaling her to pull over. Angela exhaled slowly and eased onto the shoulder. Years of training kept her calm, but a nagging unease crept in. The officer approached, his boots crunching against the gravel, broad-shouldered, angular. His badge caught the fading light as he reached her window. Their eyes met. No curiosity, no professionalism, just a familiar, thinly veiled condescension. "License and registration," he ordered, his tone clipped and firm. Angela moved deliberately, reaching for her purse before handing over her license. "Is there a problem, officer?" He barely glanced at the ID before flicking his gaze back to her, eyes roaming her face, then her hands, as if waiting for her to make the wrong move. "Step out of the vehicle," he said, slower this time. A dare. Angela inhaled deeply. "May I ask why?" "I wasn't speeding. I stayed in my lane." "What exactly was the reason for this stop?" The officer smirked. "Suspicious activity," he said. "Now get out." She had seen this before, knew exactly what this was, but she also knew better than to escalate things on a deserted highway. With measured patience, she pushed the door open and stepped out, shoulders squared. He peered inside her SUV before turning back to her. "Where you headed?" "Home," she said evenly. "Just left a military event." His gaze sharpened. "Military, huh?" A chuckle. "And what exactly do you claim to be?" Angela lifted her chin. "Colonel Angela Carter, United States Army." A pause, then a scoff. The smirk on his face widened as if he had just caught her in a lie. "Oh, really, Colonel?" He dragged out the word thick with skepticism. "You sure about that?" Angela's jaw tensed. "Yes." He chuckled. "And where's your military ID, Colonel?" Angela reached into her jacket pocket. Nothing. Her brows furrowed as she checked the other side. Still nothing. A flicker of unease. She always carried her ID. Always. Then it hit her. The last time she had it was before she changed out of her uniform. Her uniform, which was still in her locker, on base. She met his gaze. "I don't have it on me, but, uh-huh." He cut her off, flipping her driver's license between his fingers, tapping it against his palm. "No veteran status either. That's funny, huh?" His smirk deepened. "All colonels like you got no proof." Angela didn't let frustration show. This is my vehicle. My registration is in the glove compartment. You're welcome to check. Oh, I'll check more than that, he said, already moving. Angela stepped forward, blocking his path. You have no reason to search my vehicle. He turned sharply. Your behavior is suspicious, and I must say, he added, voice dripping with condescension, you're acting real nervous, ma'am. The way he said it made his intent painfully clear. He showed no respect. Angela clenched her jaw. She had seen men like him before, officers who believed their badge gave them the right to abuse their power. She knew she had two choices, argue and escalate or back down and play a different card. But Angela Carter never played a losing game. If she crossed the line, she would be ready. Her breathing remained steady, but her pulse quickened as she retraced her steps in her mind. Her military ID wasn't in her blazer, not in her wallet. Then it hit her. It was still in her uniform pocket, locked away in her base locker. She shifted her gaze to Daniels, who stood a few feet away, arms crossed. He wasn't watching her like an officer ensuring compliance. He was watching like a man waiting for her to fail. Angela straightened her posture and adjusted her blazer. As I said, I am Colonel Angela Carter, United States Army. My ID is in my uniform, which is currently secured in my base locker. Daniels let out a low, exaggerated whistle and shook his head. That so? And you expect me to just take your word for it? He twirled her license between two fingers, flipping it over lazily. Funny. I don't see Colonel written anywhere on here. No veteran status, no military rank, not even a hint that you've ever worn a uniform. He clicked his tongue. You'd think a real soldier would make sure people knew. Angela didn't rise to the bait. She had met men like Daniels before, officers who wielded authority like a weapon, men who took one look at her skin and decided she didn't belong. This wasn't about credentials. This was about control. Your department has a database, she said calmly. Look up my name, and you'll see my record. Daniels laughed softly. Oh, I could, but I don't feel like it. His smile sharpened. I like doing things the old-fashioned way. He took a step closer. So how about this? Get back in the car. Angela's eyes narrowed. I already stepped out when you asked. Now you're escalating for no reason. Daniels sighed, mock patience dripping from his voice. I asked nicely. Don't make this harder than it has to be. Angela didn't move. I'm not getting back in unless you give me a legal reason. The smirk faded from Daniel's face, replaced by something colder. You're refusing an officer's order? I'm refusing an unlawful request, she corrected. You don't have sufficient reason to search my vehicle, and you certainly don't have a reason to arrest me. Daniels tapped his fingers on his belt, exhaling loudly. See? Now this is where things get messy. A driver refusing a lawful order from law enforcement? He clicked his tongue. That starts to sound like resisting. And resisting? He let the words hang. Well, that can get ugly real fast. Angela stood her ground, but she felt the shift. He wanted her to react, to justify whatever he had already decided to do. You're not going to threaten me with arrest, are you? She asked, tilting her head slightly. Daniels leaned in just enough to make it personal. His voice was low, dangerous. Listen, Colonel, if that's really who you are, refusing a direct order never ends well. And between you and me? His lips curled upward. I don't think you're special enough to get an exception. Angela knew exactly what he was doing. She had trained soldiers in psychological warfare, in manipulation tactics meant to force an opponent into making a mistake. He wanted her to lash out, to give him a reason. She wasn't going to give it to him. Instead, she met his eyes. I know my rights, Officer Daniels, and I know exactly what you're trying to do, so arrest me or let me go. The air between them crackled with unspoken tension. Daniels had expected obedience, expected intimidation to do his job for him. But Angela wasn't afraid of him, and that made him angry. His hands flexed at his sides, hovering near his radio. His jaw tightened. He stepped in just a fraction closer, lowering his voice to something even colder. "It's up to you." Angela remained silent, refusing to back down. Daniels exhaled sharply. "You're caught," he muttered. Angela's breathing stayed steady as Daniels stared her down, waiting for her to react. She didn't move, didn't flinch. Her lips curled slightly, just enough to let him know she saw through him. Annoyance flickered in his eyes. Then, without breaking eye contact, he reached for his radio. "I have a 10... Even before verifying anything, Angela exhaled slowly. "You're making a mistake, Officer Daniels." Daniels smirked, clipping his radio back onto his belt. "Oh yeah? Last I checked, refusing to comply with law enforcement is a mistake." He nodded toward the SUV. "Now step aside." Angela didn't move. "You don't have sufficient cause to search my vehicle." Daniels stepped closer, lowering his voice as if offering her one last chance. "I'm going to search it anyway." Angela clenched her jaw. "That would be illegal." Daniels shrugged. "You suddenly care a lot about the law. If there's nothing in there, you've got nothing to worry about." Before she could respond, he turned and opened the driver's side door. Angela clenched her fists at her sides, forcing herself to stay still. Reacting would give him exactly what he wanted, an excuse to escalate. Daniels leaned in, rummaging through the center console, then the glove compartment. Papers and personal items were tossed carelessly onto the seat. His movements were deliberate, reckless, like a man determined to find something that justified his actions. "Running a little side business, Colonel," he muttered, shoving through her belongings. "Smuggling something? Maybe stolen military property?" Angela exhaled slowly. "You're crossing a line, Daniels." He barely glanced at her, smirking. "A line? I don't see a line." He moved to the passenger side, yanking the door open, rifling through compartments, unzipping bags, tossing items onto the seat. Angela refused to react. Instead, she slipped her hand into her pocket, feeling the smooth surface of her phone. She knew exactly who to call. Without a word, she turned slightly away from Daniels, scrolled through her contacts, and with a calm expression, pressed the call button. "This is Colonel Carter," she said smoothly. "I need your help. Now." Daniels was too busy tearing through her belongings to notice that the game had changed. His frustration mounted with every second. He expected to find something, anything that proved this woman wasn't who she claimed to be, but the more he searched, the less he found. Finally, he slammed the passenger door shut. "Where is it?" Angela blinked. "Where is what?" Daniels exhaled sharply, gesturing toward the mess he'd made of her car. "Whatever you're hiding, fake credentials, stolen goods, drugs." He hesitated, realizing how ridiculous he sounded. Angela didn't move, didn't speak, and that made him angry. He stepped closer, voice dropping into something sharper. "You think this is a joke? That just because you're acting calm, I'm supposed to let this go?" Angela lifted her chin slightly. "Are you finished?" Daniels scoffed, shaking his head. "Oh, we're just getting started." He yanked his radio up, pressing the button harder than necessary. "Send K9, I need a full vehicle sweep. Possible narcotics or contraband." His radio crackled to life. "Unit 13, hold all further action. You have an urgent call from command." Daniels frowned. "Command?" Still gripping the radio, he stepped away and switched frequencies. "This is Officer Daniels. Go ahead." A brief silence. Then a voice, sharp, authoritative, and angry. "Daniels, this is Captain Reynolds. What the hell do you think you're doing?" Daniels stiffened. "Captain," from his headquarters. His mouth opened, but no words came out. "Are you deaf?" Reynolds snapped. You are unlawfully detaining Colonel Angela Carter, a highly respected officer of the United States Army. You will immediately cease your actions, stand down and escort her to the station for a formal apology. Now." Daniels swallowed hard, his fingers twitching over the radio. "Sir, You ignored protocol. You illegally searched her vehicle. You harassed a senior officer like some rookie with a power complex." Angela remained still, her expression unwavering, while Daniel's blood boiled. This isn't right. How did they know? The weight of his mistake hit him like a freight train. His radio crackled again. "You're wasting time, Daniels. Get in your car. Drive her to the station. Now. Report to my office the moment you arrive, and pray I don't take your badge." The call ended. Daniels stood frozen, grip tightening on his radio, shame burning through him. Angela stepped forward, calm as ever. "Are you done?" Daniels clenched his jaw. Without a word, he walked to his patrol car and yanked the door open. "Get in." Angela sighed, calmly gathered her belongings, placed them back, and shut her SUV door before heading to the patrol car. Sliding into the back seat, not as a suspect, but as someone in control, she settled in. Daniels slammed the door, gripped the wheel, and stomped on the gas. Tires screeched. Angela, unbothered, stared ahead. "Safe driving, officer." Daniels clenched his teeth so hard he swore he tasted blood. The drive to the station was silent except for the hum of the engine. Daniels' knuckles whitened on the wheel. Angela leaned back, composed. She had won, and they both knew it. At the station, Daniels barely parked before shoving the door open and storming inside. Angela followed at an easy pace. The air in the precinct shifted. Officers stole glances, whispered, or avoided Daniels altogether. At the front desk, the sergeant barely glanced up before pressing the intercom. "She's here." Daniels tensed. Seconds later, Chief Warren Mitchell stepped out, a graying man with a no-nonsense stare. "Colonel Carter." His voice was clipped but respectful. Then his gaze locked onto Daniels. "My office. Now." Daniels hesitated, long enough for Mitchell's brow to twitch in warning, then stiffly walked in. Angela followed. The door shut with a sharp click. Mitchell glared at Daniels. "Explain why you thought arresting a U.S. Army colonel was a good idea." Daniels gritted his teeth. She refused to comply. No military ID, no veteran status on her license. How was I supposed to know? Mitchell's expression darkened. "You should have run her name, followed protocol. Instead, you harassed someone who outranks you in every way." Daniels tensed. "Sir, Shut up." Mitchell leaned in. "Do you have any idea the mess I'm cleaning up? The Pentagon called. You just embarrassed this entire department." Daniels swallowed hard, fists clenched. Angela said nothing. She didn't need to. Mitchell exhaled sharply and turned to her. "Colonel Carter, I apologize. This should never have happened." Angela nodded, unmoved. "I expect procedural changes." Mitchell's nod was firm. "Understood." Then he turned back to Daniels. "Apologize. Now." Daniels' fists tightened, his nostrils flared, but he had no choice. Slowly, he turned to Angela. He could barely keep his voice even. "I apologize." Angela tilted her head slightly. "For what?" Daniel's jaw twitched. He knew exactly what he was doing, and he hated it. "I apologize," he bit out. "Colonel?" His teeth clenched. "For the inconvenience." Mitchell's voice cut through the tension like a blade. "Try again." Daniels swallowed, his throat tight. "I apologize for my actions today. I was wrong." The words felt poisonous coming out of his mouth. "It won't happen again." Angela studied him. The words were there. Did he mean them? Number. But she didn't need him to. She had already won. Mitchell exhaled sharply. "Effective immediately, Officer Daniels. You are suspended pending review. If I could, I'd take your badge tonight." His eyes narrowed. "You're lucky I'm not." Daniels flinched. The insult dug into his bones. Angela adjusted her jacket as she stood. "I appreciate your cooperation, Chief." She glanced at Daniels, noting how he shifted uncomfortably under the weight of his failure. "You set me up," he muttered. Angela raised a brow. "I didn't have to." Daniels let out a sharp breath, fury barely contained. He had lost control, lost his grip, and that enraged him. Angela tilted her head. "I told you, you were wrong." Mitchell turned to Daniels. "I don't want to hear another word from you." Daniels remained silent, but his glare said everything. This wasn't over. Angela knew men like Daniels. He wouldn't let this go. She had to be ready for tomorrow. Sliding into the driver's seat of her SUV, Angela adjusted her mirror, taking a moment to take in the quiet road ahead. The air was crisp. The sun had just begun to rise, casting long shadows across the highway. A peaceful hum of early morning life surrounded her, but Angela wasn't the kind of person who let the surface dictate reality. There was always something beneath it, something waiting to be seen. She had spent her life learning to recognize it before it revealed itself. She wasn't tense, but she wouldn't relax either. Years in the military had taught her one simple truth. When a man like Daniels was humiliated, he wouldn't let it go. Some men understood failure, took it as a lesson, and moved on. Others, men like Daniels, let it fester. Let it burrow beneath their skin, let it rot into anger and resentment. Failure wasn't something he could accept. He had lost something he never thought could be taken from him: his authority, his control, his ability to intimidate and command unquestioned obedience. And men like him didn't just let that go. They found ways to take it back. Angela had seen it before. The way his jaw clenched so tightly his teeth looked ready to crack. The way his fists balled at his sides. The way his entire body radiated silent fury. He wasn't sorry for what he'd done. He was sorry he'd lost. For a fleeting second, she considered altering her routine. The thought barely lasted. She dismissed it as quickly as it came. She wouldn't change for a man who had once tried to control her. Failure was not an option. Avoiding him would only give him the satisfaction of knowing he had dictated her actions, and she refused to acknowledge that she had done anything wrong. She wasn't about to start acting as if she had, so she took the same route. Her movements were natural, her mind alert, but unbothered. The highway stretched ahead, mostly empty except for the occasional truck or early commuter. The soft hum of tires against pavement filled the space around her. The distant horizon stretched wide and uninterrupted. Her grip on the steering wheel was steady, her breathing even, her eyes scanning everything without truly looking, like she was searching for something. Then she saw it. A dark sedan appeared in her rearview mirror, shifting into her lane. Not in a way that immediately raised alarms, but enough to trigger quiet awareness in her mind. It had been a few cars back moments ago, blending into morning traffic without drawing attention. But now, it was closing the distance with a purpose that made her sit up slightly. She didn't react outwardly, didn't make any sudden adjustments that would reveal she had noticed. But she was watching. The sedan wasn't tailgating. It wasn't trying to overtake her. It wasn't adjusting its speed with the natural ebb and flow of traffic. It was just following. Angela exhaled slowly, keeping her posture relaxed, her grip steady. If this was a coincidence, just another driver headed in the same direction, the car would change lanes or pass her in the next few moments. It didn't. Instead, it crept closer. Her fingers flexed around the steering wheel, not out of nerves, but calculation. This was too deliberate. A normal driver wouldn't hold their position in someone's blind spot this long, wouldn't creep forward with such measured precision without signaling an intent to pass or exit. Then, without warning, the sedan surged forward. It wasn't a natural acceleration, not the gradual press of a gas pedal as a driver adjusted to their rhythm. It was intentional, sharp, a lunge forward, meant to close the distance too fast, too aggressively. Angela sensed it before it even happened. Her body had already reacted before her mind confirmed the threat. instinct ignited in perfect alignment with reality. This wasn't impatience. This wasn't a mistake. This was an attack. Her gaze flicked to the side mirror. For a split second, her eyes locked onto the driver. Daniels, out of uniform, his face twisted in pure, unfiltered rage. His hands gripped the wheel with the kind of force that spoke of barely restrained fury. No measured restraint this time, no manufactured authority behind a badge, no thin veil of professionalism to hide behind. Just anger. Just a man who had lost control of his life and decided the only way to get it back was by controlling hers. Angela inhaled through her nose, her pulse steady. Her mind was already working through the variables. He had nothing left to lose. That made him dangerous, but it also made him reckless. The sedan edged closer, pressing into her space, trying to force her toward the shoulder, trying to trap her. She didn't react out of fear. She didn't slam the brakes. She didn't yank the wheel. She didn't panic the way he wanted her to, the way he was depending on. Instead, she let her SUV drift, just slightly, just enough to sell the illusion that she was reacting on pure instinct. She watched as he took the bait, as he pushed forward to cut her off. She flicked on her turn signal, a small automatic movement designed to make him believe he had her. Daniels lunged at the opening, moving in to force her into a mistake, and that was his mistake. In the final second, she wrenched the wheel in the opposite direction, completely breaking her trajectory. His tires screeched against the pavement as he overcorrected, jerking the wheel too hard in his desperation to recover. Angela remained calm, controlled, watching the way his face twisted in frustration, the realization settling in. She wasn't panicking. She wasn't crumbling under pressure. She wasn't going to make this easy for him. But Daniels wasn't done. He adjusted quickly, surging forward again. More erratic now, more aggressive. His car veered toward hers with reckless determination. The chase continued. Their vehicles weaved in a dangerous battle for control. The landscape shifted as the open highway gave way to quieter roads, an empty stretch of pavement ahead. His breath rose and fell too fast, his fists clenched at his sides, his entire body trembling with the unbearable weight of knowing that everything had been taken from him, and that she was the reason. "This isn't how it was supposed to go," he muttered. Angela sighed, shaking her head. "Then I guess you're just as predictable as I thought." Daniel's rage exploded like a live wire. He lunged at her with everything he had, like a man who had been waiting for this moment. A man who had let his anger build to a point of no return. A man who had convinced himself that the only way to take back what he had lost was to destroy it first. Angela had read him long before the first swing. His movements were sloppy, fueled by fury, not skill, the kind of attack that came from someone who had spent years relying on intimidation and brute force rather than precision. She dodged easily. His stance shifted as his fist cut through empty air, his own momentum dragging him forward and leaving him exposed for a split second. She could have ended it there. A sharp strike to his exposed ribs, a calculated elbow to his throat. A single kick to his knee would have shattered him. But this wasn't about stopping him. It was about making sure he understood. Daniels barely had time to recover before he attacked again, his frustration growing with every failed attempt. His movements became more erratic, his second swing wilder than the first, reckless, desperate, aimed for her jaw. Angela ducked just beneath it, shifting to his side before he could adjust, darting forward and driving her fist into his ribs with enough force to make him stumble. He let out a sharp grunt, breath hitching from the impact, but it wasn't enough to stop him. If anything, it only made him angrier. "You," he snarled, spinning to face her again, his teeth bared like a caged animal. "You think you're so superior, don't you?" Angela didn't answer. She didn't need to. She had already measured him, already seen exactly who he was, a man without depth. Daniels charged again, this time lowering his stance, trying to tackle her. He thought he could use his weight against her. Thought if he got close enough, he could bring her down by sheer force. It was a mistake. Angela waited until the last second, let him fully commit, then shifted her weight, pivoting sharply as she hooked her foot behind his, using his own momentum against him. Daniels hit the ground hard. The impact sent a shockwave through him, his back slamming against the pavement, air rushing from his lungs in a choked gasp. He had expected to be on top, pinning her down. Instead, he was the one sprawled on the asphalt, disoriented, his mind scrambling to catch up with what had just happened. Angela stepped back, not in hesitation, but to give him the illusion of recovery. She could end it here, could press her knee to his chest, could knock him unconscious with one well-placed strike. But that wasn't enough. Daniels needed to feel every second of this loss. He coughed, rolling onto his hands and knees, breath ragged as he pushed himself up. His face twisted into something between fury and disbelief, as if his brain couldn't fully process what his body had just experienced. Angela tilted her head slightly. "Are you done?" The question landed like a slap, cutting deeper than any physical blow. Daniel's fists clenched, his knuckles scraped raw from hitting the ground, but he wasn't ready to accept defeat. Not yet. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The only sound between them was the ragged rhythm of his breath as he lay there, staring up at the sky like he was trying to convince himself this wasn't happening. Angela didn't move, didn't step forward. His voice echoed through the empty road, laced with something venomous, something raw. "You think your little game means you've won?" Angela didn't move right away. Instead, she took a moment to assess. She watched the way his fists clenched at his sides, the way his chest rose and fell with uneven breaths, the way his jaw twitched as if he was barely holding himself together. He was unraveling, and she had seen it coming from the moment he walked out of that police station. Finally, she unfastened her seatbelt with deliberate ease and pushed the door open, stepping out into the crisp morning air. The world around them was as empty as the road itself, amplifying the crackling tension between them. She shut the door behind her, meeting his gaze with the same quiet intensity she had maintained since this all began. "If I remember correctly," she said, her voice measured, "you're the one who chased me." Daniels let out a sharp, humorless laugh, rubbing a hand over his face before dropping it with a harsh exhale. "Chased you? Is that what you call it?" He stepped forward, his eyes burning. "I call it fixing a mistake." Angela arched a brow, tilting her head slightly. "And what mistake would that be?" Daniel's teeth clenched, his entire body rigid. "Letting you walk away like you won. Letting you humiliate me. Letting you think you could pull a stunt like that and not pay for it." He stepped closer, his voice lowering into something more dangerous. "You think you embarrassed me back there? You think you made me look weak?" Angela held her ground, her gaze unwavering. "You did that to yourself." His face darkened, his expression twisting into something worse. "You don't get it, do you? You don't understand how people like you can't just act untouchable. Like you can challenge authority and walk away unscathed. You think just because you made the right phone call, involved the right people, that it makes you better than me?" Angela inhaled slowly, keeping her tone even. I think following the law makes me better than you." Daniels's nostrils flared, his body coiled like a tightly wound spring. "You think that badge ever meant anything to me? You think I needed it to put you in your place?" With a guttural growl, he lunged again, feinting left, before swinging his right hand toward her ribs. It was more calculated than his previous attacks, but still too slow. Angela caught his wrist, mid-swing, twisting it efficiently, sending a sharp jolt of pain up his arm and forcing him to his knees before he could even process what had happened. His body moved on instinct, trying to adjust, trying to alleviate the pressure, but she didn't let him. She leaned in slightly, her voice low, unwavering. "You don't know when to quit, do you?" Daniels gritted his teeth, his free hand reaching for her, still trying to fight. Angela exhaled slowly. She was done letting him dictate this. With a calculated twist, she yanked his trapped arm forward while sweeping his legs out from under him, sending him crashing to the pavement a second time, harder than before. His head bounced off the ground, his vision momentarily blurring from the impact. Angela stepped back, watching him struggle, watching realization creep into his expression. He was losing, and there was nothing he could do to stop it. Angela tilted her head slightly, watching him, her gaze sharp, unshaken. Number. But it was the only thing keeping you from making a real mistake. And now that it's gone, you're spiraling. Daniels let out a bitter laugh, but there was no humor in it. You think I'm spiraling, lady? You have no idea how much restraint I've been showing. His hands flexed at his sides, his fingers twitching as if itching to do something more. I've had to listen to people talk about how I screwed up. I've had to see them whisper behind my back, stare at me like I'm the problem when all I ever did was my job. And you? He pointed at her, his hand trembling with the weight of his anger. You sit there, acting so damn smug like you're untouchable, like you're better than me. You think you can keep pushing, keep playing your little game, and walk away without consequences? Angela's expression remained unreadable. This isn't a game, Daniels. It never was. You lost because you were wrong, and instead of facing it, you decided to blame me for it. Daniels took another step forward, closing the distance between them, his voice sharp and bitter. And you decided to play the victim, huh? Poor little colonel, harassed by the big bad cop, making sure everyone sees you as the hero in this story. You got what you wanted. Angela exhaled slowly, her words rolling off her tongue like water over stone. If I got what I wanted, you wouldn't be standing here right now. For a second, something flickered in his expression, something close to realization, close to understanding just how far he had taken this. But it vanished quickly, swallowed by his pride, his hatred, his absolute refusal to accept reality. You don't get to decide how this ends, he growled. Angela squared her shoulders, keeping her voice deliberately calm. Number, but you can. You can get in your car and leave right now before you do something you can't take back. Daniel's breath came uneven, his chest heaving. She knew he would attack again. She had already seen it in him. He wasn't finished. Not yet. No matter how much his body failed him, no matter how obvious it was that this was a fight he couldn't win, he would rather destroy himself than admit defeat. So she waited. Daniels groaned, his head tilting slightly, his gaze unfocused, but still filled with rage. He rolled onto his side, then pushed himself up again with trembling arms. He should have stayed down. Angela exhaled, rolling her shoulders, preparing for the next round. She had given him every chance to stop. Now she would end it. Daniels spat blood onto the pavement. His body was breaking, but his pride still demanded that he fight. His hands shook as he forced himself upright, his breathing ragged and uneven. But Angela could see it in his eyes. He still wasn't ready to accept the reality of this loss. Angela rotated her shoulders, her stance unwavering as she watched him. He was slower now, his movements no longer driven by raw aggression, but by desperation, beginning to realize that the strength he once believed he had was completely gone. "Stay down, Daniels," she said, her voice calm, almost a warning. But Daniels was not a man who knew when to quit. He growled through gritted teeth, forcing himself to stand tall, his fists clenched, barely strong enough to hold their shape. His pride wouldn't let him stay on the ground. His mind refused to process that he had already lost. With a furious snarl, he lunged again, swinging wildly, putting everything he had left into one last desperate attempt to take her down. Angela moved to counter, but this time he landed a hit. His fist collided with her ribs, sending a sharp wave of pain through her side. She grunted, her body instinctively tensing against the blow, but she refused to give him the reaction he wanted. Daniels saw the opening and swung again. This time, his knuckles struck her jaw hard enough to send a jolt through her skull. But Angela had been hit before. She had been in real fights, the kind where hesitation meant death. Daniels had no idea what kind of storm he had just invited. Angela took a step back, brushing off the sting, her jaw tightening. If he wanted to drag this out, she would let him, but it would only make his defeat more unbearable. He attacked again, reckless, thinking he had a second wind, thinking that 2 landed punches meant he was turning this fight around. He was wrong. Angela dodged sharply, cutting to his side. Before he could adjust, she hooked an arm around his neck and wrenched him backward into a brutal chokehold. Daniels choked on his own breath. His hands immediately clawed at her arm, struggling against the iron grip that locked around his throat. He fought, trying to pry her off, but Angela only tightened her hold, locking her legs around his waist and dragging him down. His body jolted with panic as his airflow was cut off. His fingers scraped desperately at her arms, his movements growing more erratic, more frantic with every passing second. Angela held him steady. "This is over, Daniels," she said, her voice calm, almost detached. "You're done." Daniels refused to accept it. He stomped his foot, kicked against the pavement, his nails digging into her skin, trying anything to break free. Angela didn't loosen her grip. She didn't let go. Daniel's struggles slowed, his movements weakened, his breath turned into ragged, shallow gasps. His pride had carried him this far, but pride meant nothing when your body was dying, when your lungs screamed for oxygen, when the world around you started to fade. The hands that had fought so hard began to tremble. One last wild kick, then stillness, and finally the moment she had been waiting for. Daniels let out a broken, choked sound, the last remnants of his pride slipping away. He couldn't win, he couldn't fight anymore, and he knew it. His voice came out barely more than a whisper. "Please." Angela didn't move. "What was that?" Daniels whimpered, his body fully giving in, his breath ragged with shame. "Please, let me go." Angela held the choke for a few more seconds, letting him sit in his complete failure, before finally releasing him. She shoved him forward, and his body collapsed onto the pavement, coughing violently as air rushed back into his lungs. Daniels lay there, gasping, shaking. Angela pushed herself up, rolling her shoulders, ignoring the ache in her ribs and jaw. She had taken a few hits, but compared to what he had just been through, they were nothing. Daniels coughed, his hands pressing against the ground, his entire body trembling from exhaustion. But Angela saw something else in his eyes now. For the first time, he looked afraid, not just of her, but of what had just happened. She stepped forward. She watched the way he flinched, how his entire body tensed as if expecting another blow, expecting more punishment. But she didn't hit him. She just stared at him. "You brought this on yourself," she said quietly. "You could have walked away, Daniels. You could have let it go, but you didn't, and now you're here." Daniels swallowed hard, his throat raw. His shoulders sagged. He looked small, defeated, like the weight of his own choices had finally crushed him. But then, in the silence, something shifted. His breathing steadied. His fingers curled against the pavement. And before Angela could react, he sprang forward, forcing himself to his feet and sprinting toward his car. Angela's eyes narrowed. He wasn't just trying to escape. He was running. Not on her watch. Daniels pushed his body forward, his muscles screaming in protest, his breath ragged and uneven. But his mind was locked onto one goal: get to the car. If he could make it inside, if he could drive away, he could convince himself that he still had something left, that this wasn't the end. Angela wasn't going to let that happen. Her body moved before the thought even fully formed. Her feet pounded against the pavement as she chased after him, closing the distance in seconds. Daniels was fast, but he was running on pure adrenaline. His battered body betrayed him with every uneven step. Angela had trained for this, for endurance, for controlling the kind of chase Daniels was attempting. She moved like a shadow on his heels. Daniels reached his car, fingers clutching the door handle. But before he could open it, Angela cut in from the side, slamming her palm against the door and forcing it shut. Daniels barely had time to react before she spun, driving her elbow into his ribs. The impact sent him stumbling against the car. His breath exploded from his lungs, a sharp, gasping wheeze. His body was already beaten and weak. He slumped against the vehicle, his knees threatening to buckle before he caught himself against the hood. Angela wasn't done. She stepped in front of him, positioning herself between him and any chance of escape. Behind him, an SUV loomed, parked too close to his sedan, boxing him in. He had nowhere to run. Daniels was still gasping for air, his back pressed against the car like it could somehow swallow him whole, like there was still a way out of this. His hands curled weakly, bruised knuckles trembling at his sides. Angela rolled her shoulders, calm and deliberate, watching him with an expression that made one thing clear. She was still in control. No amount of desperate effort was going to change how this ended. "Are you done running?" she asked, voice steady. Daniels swallowed hard, his throat bobbing. His breathing was still too short, his body still leaning against the car for support. His silence was answer enough. Angela exhaled, tilting her head slightly. "Did you really think you were going to get away after all this?" Daniels's jaw clenched, but there was no real fight left in his eyes. No victory here. No last stand.